everyone, my name is Madison Golden, and I decided to do my digital library on ancient games. So I originally had this idea when one of my coworkers told a story from his childhood about playing Karam with his dad in India. And I thought the game sounded really fun. So I started researching board games all over the world. And after a little while, I discovered that all of these games from as far back as like 3100 BCE, so 5,000 years ago, and so many of them were still played today. So I thought that'd be a great way to kind of narrow my topic and make it not only like board games from around the world, but specifically ancient ones. So like I said, many of these games are still played today and have evolved into contemporary games like Snakes and Ladders, for example. And after reading some articles, I learned that games have developed over time, many from the originals that I'm going to talk about today, to reflect the ways the interests and concerns of society have shifted over time. And as I note on the slide there, these games create cultural memory. They're used for battle practice and strategy, or they were, and they were also used in religious rituals and for spiritual purposes. So I kind of looked at my selection criteria kind of from a collection policy point of view. So for goals and purposes, I wanted to engage the imagination of other game and history lovers and share another way of viewing past societies. I chose 12 games along with rules and playthroughs, and only PDFs are within scope of being used within the library interface. Everything else is either a physical resource or an external link. My priorities were finding and displaying the most accurate and relevant historical games. So in other words, trying to find the ones that are oldest, had the largest impact on other games and developments. And then my selection criteria was that I wanted them to be in the public domain and cover the whole world, not just one area, which brings me to the balance and prioritization, our key point. I had to choose some games that weren't quite as old to incorporate more cultures. Like I chose one from the Aztec civilization that was made in 1350. So definitely a lot less than 5,000 years ago. So 4 basic criteria: quality, library relevance, aesthetic and technical aspects, and then cost, which wasn't super relevant since the physical items were the only thing where cost might be involved, and that wasn't my burden to incur in that case, considering it's a digital situation and they are in the public domain. So my research was heavily aided by BoardGameGeek.com. They have a big list of public domain games, and then an article called 12 Ancient Board Games from Around the World by Asiana Circus. So I wanted to do mostly games, but leave room for the resources. So I settled on these 12 games. The first one is Go from 2400 BCE from China, Backgammon 3000 BCE, Mesopotamian India, Karam 3000 BCE, India, Sinet from Egypt 3100 BCE. That's actually the one that is used for spiritual purposes. It kind of takes you through the journey into the afterlife, which is really cool. Bon Sugoroku is from Japan, 500 CE. Patoli is the Aztec one I was talking about before, from 1350. Ludus Ventriculorum, 116 BCE, and that's Roman. Checkers, 3000 BCE from modern day Iraq, so the Mesopotamia area. Chess, 500 CE from India. Mancala, 100 BCE from Egypt. That one is kind of more of a collection of games, and it is one game as well. So it kind of spans all of Africa. The Royal Game of Ur, 2600 BCE from Mesopotamia, modern day Iraq, and then Pachisi, 200 BCE, India. And I will note right now that a lot of these games go by different names or have slightly different dates. That's just kind of like an archaeological evidence thing. And since they are so many versions of these over time, it's kind of like maybe that name was used now and not then, or vice versa. So I just wanted to make that note. For my resources, I wanted to meet the rest of the requirements because all of my games are represented by images. So I have a mix of PDF manuals and rule books to look through within the interface, a podcast on ancient games, and 3 how-to playthrough videos on YouTube. So when selecting rulebooks, I use sources like the Go Foundation, Crom.org, Hasbro, museums, etc. The podcast episodes from a board game and historical focus podcast. And the videos were from a national Chinese television network for Go. Sinet was from an ancient gaming content creator. And then the last playthrough was created by the British Museum. So since these objects are not within the public domain, I included their copyright information where I had previously written public domain for all the games. There are some key considerations when developing a digital library collection for interactive resources. These are to include information on the audience, duration, rating, genre, and type of game, pieces included or needed to play, and contextual and rule information. So I'll show later how I added that all into my metadata. And other keys for accessing games in digital libraries is providing alternate titles or related games for discovery, along with publishers, so users could buy them despite their being in the public domain. So for access, I made some of the key fields searchable. After my research, noted what game players most often search for or feel are important when searching for games. For users focusing on the historical aspect, those components are part of the searchable field as well, like the date and creator. So I used vocabulary pretty much everywhere I could, but I had to add quite a few items I found on the Library of Congress website, on the Getty AAT website as well. So for facets, I chose the most defining characteristics of each game, which were creator, date, title, and format, which just says whether it is a game or another type of resource. That's what the format one is. And then many of the creators are listed as unknown and associated with the culture. So like unknown Indian, unknown Mesopotamian. So that field kind of serves two purposes, because if we don't know the creator, it kind of gives the context of the culture from which it originates. So these are the metadata elements and the DC mapping. So I created these based on the articles on interactive resource metadata schemas. I read a couple of those. They included a lot that weren't really relevant to these tabletop historical games like Mood or the systems that can be played on, things like that. They also didn't fall into distinct genres very well, I found, and a lot of them are like really similar, like chess and checkers, you know. But in any case, they map on the Dublin core pretty easily. So this is what my field ended up looking like. Like I said, the creator kind of serves two purposes, with being kind of a cultural indication as well. The audience is age. The description includes things like the rating or kind of more like a little bit of historical information. The duration is either like gameplay or how long the videos are for other types of resources. So those all kind of have a little bit of a dual purpose. And then this relation requires is where I put in information about what contents you need to play the game. And then there's a publisher and the access right. So I had a place to say something is in the public domain, and also put a publisher on in case someone wanted to go access or buy that game somewhere else. And then for identifier, I mostly use the URLs for the resources, and then the OCLC number associated with that publisher and WorldCat for the games. So I chose the results display to correlate with my facets, mostly with title, date, format, and creator. Once the item is open, it can be used, or the user can read more about the game. From there, the link metadata fields will show results with those same characteristics like date or creator. For the colors, I chose muted reds and greens because these colors appeared often on the games and are reminiscent of ancient times with the earthy tones. The terracotta red color and the dark green kind of always reminds me of antiquity, but maybe that's just me. They show up in grid view. I was prioritizing having more resources on the page, but the list view is definitely still helpful, showing more information once the item is open. And then the landing page was designed to intrigue users. So I'll show you that right now. wanted to have something that kind of tells what it's about and very obviously shows that it's an ancient board game kind of situation. And then for my suggested browsing, I had one of the dates, 3000 BCE, that a lot of them fell into the Mesopotamia region, and then one link to just the rules and how-to resources included. And then this is what that looks like. So it is definitely mostly green with just a little bit of red for the accents. When I was considering evaluation, I wanted to focus on the core concepts of the Delos Manifesto, so content, user, functionality, quality, policy, and architecture. I also considered the methods shown on the screen, kind of what could and couldn't do given the current situation. And then for phase of testing, I focused on those first 5 for the same reason, just given the stage the digital library is in. So for the implementation of that, for analyzing the popularity of different resources with users, I'll use the content DM interface to show the page views. So I can kind of get a sense of what's being used a lot and what's being liked and what isn't. I will also include my email on the landing page to receive any questions or concerns. That way I can interact with users and save feedback for improvements. On my own, I did several walkthroughs of the site to find dead ends or bad navigation. This also helped me see what colors look the best and in what capacity, and then with what elements and how to organize my facets. So for example, the title section didn't seem as helpful, so I moved it to be the last facet. It was like listing just a lot of the PDFs like by page numbers. So yeah, just not the most helpful considering they're on the screen anyway. And then I would ask other friends or colleagues to do the same walkthroughs and answer some guided questions on what looks good or could be improved, just for a second opinion. And that's it. Thank you all for watching.